Hi, this is Austin Nakatsuka, and I have this whole video also posted on my site, but I decided to sort of slow down and show the part where I'm using the 30 gauge needle to lift the lens, um, and I wanted to slow that down and show that part a little bit uh, better here. So this is still in, I think, double time, so it's still a little bit faster than what I'm doing in real life. Because what I'm doing here is all very, very, very slow. Because even though that lens doesn't look that dislocated, it's actually very precarious right now, and it can drop at any given moment. So I'm careful with every single one of my movements here, everything I do, because it's very easy to drop this lens if you even just touch it. And once I drop this lens, it's over. Then all of a sudden that becomes a retina issue, and I need to get my retina colleagues to help me fish it out. Um, but I want to show this technique here in at least closer to real time because I think it's an important sort of concept in learning. So here I bent a 30 gauge needle and I measured 4 millimeters from the limbus here in the pars plana. I would have gone 3.5, but this lens is kind of back there. You might not be able to see it, but it's kind of back there. So I'm a little scared that if I go too close to it, I'll hit it with that needle and then the lens will drop. So here I'm using that needle to enter into the eye. Now the eye's kind of soft right now, and so it's a little scary here. So you can see that the eye's kind of mushing in and um, indenting, and you don't like that. But I'm using the sharp part of the needle to kind of wiggle it in there very slowly and carefully to get it behind there and behind that lens. And why don't I put more viscoelastic, you ask? Because I'm really worried. I put viscoelastic in the anterior chamber, as you can see, but I didn't put a whole lot because I'm really worried that I'm going to drop that lens in there. And here you can see making a main incision or wound can be really hard with a soft eye like that. And thankfully I have a really sharp knife, a diamond knife there to kind of wiggle it in and still make it a stepped incision there. But I have to be very careful. And so I'm using one side, underneath that needle's underneath the lens. You can't really see it right now, but it's under the iris, and it's helping to lift that lens up while I'm grabbing it anteriorly there, and I can secure it and put it in the anterior chamber there. And once it's up into the anterior chamber, meaning the haptic is up above the iris, then I'm kind of safe. Okay, there, you can see my needle underneath it. You see that? And that's my needle, and I'm just holding it there so that if it falls back, I can just lift it up again. And not only that, my left hand is also helping to control the eye and keep the eye where it needs to be. And I use that and my other hand together to be able to get the traction I need to be able to move this lens where I want it to. So that needle's behind the lens here. Sorry, it's a little off screen. I'm going to bring it back on screen in a second. But there, you can see the needle, and it's just keeping it safe there and protected so that the lens doesn't fall back there, okay? And I like using this 30 gauge needle technique because it makes a tiny little hole there in the pars plana, and then I pull it out and it's basically self-seals. I don't have to suture it up or anything. I don't have to leave stitches in there. And the patients, I don't have to worry about it leaking afterward. How many times I've had to deal with leaking sclerotomy incisions. I don't have to worry about that. It leaves virtually no blood, very little. And and the patients don't feel the discomfort of these huge vicral sutures or gut sutures in there after these big pars plana ports. So I like this technique here because it is sort of less invasive, minimally invasive way to support what I need and in getting this lens up there and doesn't get um, doesn't cause too much ancillary trauma like blood, and it doesn't really get tangled in the vitreous too much. So I'm not usually too worried about that. So here I'm enlarging that wound a little bit, and the reason I'm doing that is because I'm actually going to pull this whole lens out in one piece. And it's going to seem a little barbaric, I know, because the eye is a little soft. But I like to do this instead of cutting the lens in two pieces, because with an open capsule like this, which is what we're dealing with here in the dislocated lens, it has an open capsule here. I don't want to drop pieces back there, which I have in the past when I'm cutting it. So I'm going to try to take this whole thing out in one piece. There it goes. And I'm careful here because I'm not sure if there's some vitreous attached to it, so I just cut just in case, just to make sure that there's no vitreous attached there. Okay, so I take it out all in one. But you can still see my needle there, and I just slip it right out, and I'm done. I don't have to suture anything up or close it up. And I like that technique to kind of lift lenses. And I have other situations, I don't have the videos for which, unfortunately, but where the lens is completely hanging back, you can barely see it, and I use that 30 gauge needle to push it back up, and I'm able to use that to get it where I need to be. The rest of this part is really sped up. It's just to show kind of the end of the case and everything that I did, which is a whole lot. But essentially, I've removed that lens there, and a lot of times when it comes to these secondary IOL situations, once you can get the loose lens in there out of the eye, then you're in good shape and you can go ahead and clean it all up, do the vitrectomy, and get all set up for sclerofixation of your new lens, which actually in this case I originally tried to not sclerofixate because I thought I had capsule left, and then it turns out that capsule was not strong enough to support it. It was too weak. So I ended up sclerofixating the lens, which you're going to see down the line. But anyway, so that was the technique to use the needle to lift, the 30 gauge needle to lift the lens or lift something that's fallen. And I just secure the lens that way, and I like that technique. I think it's less invasive. You can see the rest of this video and what happens to it in one of my other videos that's on the site. But I'm going to kind of speed through this and fast forward ahead on this. But thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll show you a few more videos of using that 30 gauge needle to lift the lens into the anterior chamber and secure it.